Not much time, so I'll go straight in. It won't be a lecture, there isn't time for it. What is truth and spelling out the theory or whatever. Just some thoughts from me, and indeed some thoughts from you. You have sheets on your desk tables which we will go to later. And hopefully we'll all end up a bit wiser about the subject of truth, honesty and trust. I'm going to start with some remarks about those things in the personal sphere, and then I'll do the Quaker twist, and then we'll move on to the world of politics. I did want to include the world of business as well, and honesty in business and so on, but there just isn't time to even to touch that. So I would invite you, in your mind's eye, to go to the most important personal relationship you have, whether it's your partner, your mum or dad, or your siblings, or a close friend. And I put it to you that starting with truth and honesty, and then those two things lead to trust, are fundamental to that relationship. I just put it to you, and you can verify that for yourselves. You might want to spare someone's feelings at some point, and that might entail a compromise with truth, but when the chips are down, when someone's on their deathbed, when you're deciding whether to move from Germany to California, as my daughter, stepdaughter did recently with her husband, they had to decide that, or when you're taking really major decisions like that, maybe to move house, then truth is the only way. And I would suggest that at the heart of a good personal relationship, there's always truth and honesty. And without it, there's no trust. And if, for instance, there's been some cheating going on in a personal relationship, the not telling is almost as damaging, if not more damaging, than the actual cheating. That's where the problem is. It's what happens to the trust between the two. So that's a little just a diversion onto the personal and how that relates to the, you'll see how, if we behave like that in the personal sphere, if honesty is so important in the personal sphere, why is it so difficult in the public sphere? Why are there so many cases of it not happening? Now for the Quaker twist. I'm just going to tell a story. Mr. Penn, who was a very famous Quaker in the 17th century, and Mr. George Fox, who was even more famous, William Penn had this problem about whether he should wear his sword or not. And at the time, there was a civil war going on, so a sword was quite handy, actually. And it showed that if called upon, you could defend yourself. And anyway, gentlemen wore swords. But William Penn was not happy about this, and he spoke to George Fox, who was sort of, had a lot of prestige, put it that way. And he said, what do I do about this issue of my sword? And George Fox said, wear it so long thou canst, which is very famous in Quakerdom. Wear it so long thou canst. Now that's very interesting. He didn't say, do this, do that. No rule. The rule is, what do you really feel about this? Have you waited on God, which is what Quakers do, how they define worship day, waiting on God, waiting on the light, to be inspired as to what is the right thing to do, to be convicted in other people's language. So when you know what's the right thing to do, then you'll do it. And if the right thing for you now is to wear the sword, wear it. And when you come to realise, when you come to see, George Fox felt, which was you shouldn't, then you will not wear it. But the important thing is the congruence. You behave the same as what you really believe. And that's the fundamental aspect of truth. Inner truth, I call it. Inner truth. And it means that you're always behaving in line with what you really believe. And that commitment can be very costly. And there's one outworking of it in daily life. Quakers do not take the oath in a court, they affirm, and the reason is they don't want to imply that in the court they'll tell the truth, and outside it'll be a bit less than the truth. There's one truth, and you tell it all the time, so they don't accept that implication of a double standard. So, we move on to the public arena, and we're 5 minutes behind schedule, but never mind. You've all got on your desks a piece of paper. The first item on that is, gosh, I need one to see what it says. It says, politics, what is it? And I'd like you in the tables to discuss this very quickly. Probably the best way is simply someone to take notes and to ask each person in turn to say very briefly to answer that question which I have below. Now, politics, what is politics? Politics is about how we take decisions as a community. So it's a mechanism for lots of people. All of us have different views, all of us have different beliefs, and somehow you have to decide which side of the road we're driving on. You have to decide how important is it that you take illegal drugs? Should they be legal? There has to be a decision, and the decision has to apply to everybody. So how is that worked out? And my question is, what are the preconditions for those decisions to be made for the good of all? And not to be made in a sectarian way, not to be made for somebody's personal benefit, not to be made to favour one group, and as we see in the Ukraine, not to be favoured, to favour one region, but everybody. It's difficult. And the question is involved, what needs to happen so that bad decisions, the ones favouring one group, one person, one area, don't happen, and so that decisions are taken for the good of all. What are the preconditions? How can we arrange society so that the decision-making process is a good one? So, if you can talk about that, maybe, as I say, go around and just each person contribute what they think. And 5 minutes maybe. So it is quick, it is just your reactions. Somebody makes a note and then we'll feedback. Thank you.